If you had to imagine your perfect camera, I mean your dream camera, chances are it might look something a little bit like this. The Hasselblad X2D 100C. 100 megapixels, medium format, 1 terabyte of internal solid state storage, built from a single block of aluminium alloy, making this one of the most gorgeous cameras ever made. However, it also shoots no video. It is also pretty slow to capture images with, and with a lens like this on the front, it's going to run you about $12,000. So with all that being said, why is the Hasselblad X2D worth its price tag? Let's talk about it. First, a super quick disclaimer. So Hasselblad sent me this camera in exchange for 2 videos on the channel. Of course, I said yes, it's obviously an extremely fascinating camera, a beautiful camera, and I've never actually even shot medium format, let alone with a Hasselblad. So from that perspective, this video is a sponsored video, but I did want to almost like set your perspective, let you know the arrangement. Hasselblad don't have any dictation on the content itself. Most importantly, this video is my own honest opinions. So let's get into it. So I took this Hasselblad recently on a trip to Singapore, and what an experience it was. It was just a joy to shoot with this camera. It actually reminds me of the first time that I picked up a camera in the first place. Obviously, I work with cameras day in, day out now, but I'm fairly sure everyone can remember the first experience that they had picking up a camera for the first time, a real physical camera body. And I haven't really had that experience again as a professional, someone who works with cameras all the time. Picking up this camera felt a little bit like picking up the camera for the first time. It is such a beautiful experience. So first of all, if anyone has a chance to go to Singapore, you have to go to the Cloud Garden. It's basically this inside botanical garden, but they do this misting where they just basically flood the whole area with mist, and it just creates this unbelievably cool experience. They have an amazing waterfall as well. It's just an absolutely stunning place. So of course, an amazing place to take the Hasselblad for a spin. I ended up getting some really fun images, some really beautiful compositions. These photos that you're seeing right now are relatively unedited. I have of course corrected them and given them a slight pass over edit, but really I haven't really messed with the colors or changed any of the image characteristics or anything like that. Talking a little bit more about this camera design, you can just see how beautiful it is. There's a couple of really important things for me to call out. First of all, it does have a viewfinder. It is a really nice viewfinder experience. However, you can see that there is an articulating screen on the back, and this screen is massive. It makes all of the images when you are shooting just look absolutely beautiful. It's gorgeously high resolution, and it does make for just a wonderful shooting experience. The camera fits beautifully in my hand. There's a decent amount of weight. I would say the camera doesn't feel like overly heavy, but it feels unbelievably substantial. Whilst I probably wouldn't be taking this into extreme conditions, I have kind of no doubt that it actually would hold up because of just how well this is actually designed. So the lens I've got on the body right now is the 38mm f2.5. It's one of the XCD series of lenses by Hasselblad. And what's interesting about this camera system is, if you've not shot with medium format cameras before, it's a bit different to how normal focal ranges and equivalents work. Basically, this 38mm actually works out, it goes down in focal range versus up. So this is equivalent to a 30mm, and that is a really nice focal range. I've had a lot of fun shooting with this lens. It's got lovely manual focus control. It has a really nice action on the ring here. Look, I'm going to put this over here. It's just something so satisfying about that sound. This basically can be programmed to control different things in the camera body. I've programmed that to ISO, just have a little bit more manual shooting control. I think something that stuck out to me about shooting with this camera, there is definitely a Hasselblad look, and I think it's actually quite similar in the video world of the Arri look. Nobody can necessarily pin down why the Arri look is so superior to other camera systems. There is something about the quality of these images. Like, you actually shoot your images and it's not the most sharp image possible. Like, even though the 100 megapixel files are unbelievably high resolution, it's not that you look at it and go, wow, that's just the sharpest image I've ever seen. There is just something subtle about the images that is very hard to pin down. It really does just create gorgeous photos. So we've talked about the 100 megapixel sensor. Each photo that you are shooting in RAW with this camera is coming out to 200 megapixels, so you get an absolute ton of data. We will edit a shot towards the end of this video because I want to take you through and just show you quite how much data is available in some of these files. But you can clearly see from maybe this photo here is a good example. I'm actually able to crop so far in on these images. It is really, really insane. I've never shot with a camera that has this much available data to play with. For certain use cases, this is going to be unbelievably useful. Maybe you're shooting portraits, and the ability to reframe with essentially losing just zero quality. Of course, other cameras have this, but there is just something about having 100 megapixels of resolution to play with, combined with that Hasselblad look that we've already talked about. Yeah, it's just going to be so advantageous. Something which I haven't seen talked about very often in videos about the X2D is actually the menu design. This is by far and away the best camera menu design that I've ever used. Don't get me wrong, there aren't quite as many settings as you tend to get in something like maybe a Sony camera or something like that. Things are a little bit more minimal. So of course you can control the camera manually with the physical controls on the camera, but you can also pretty much fully control the camera via the touchscreen on the back. And it's just a fantastic system, giving you tons of flexibility. Then if we actually go onto the main settings page, you can see just how well this is laid out. It actually reminds me of the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera's design. If anyone's ever used that camera, it's just so efficient. You see all of your settings at an instant, and you don't have to like go through other menus to actually get to the setting you want to get to. Absolute top level menu design. And obviously this is something which you use day in, day out when you are using a camera, so it's not one to be underestimated. The camera also has this top display just right next to the shutter button, which as you can see gives you a quick glance to all of your settings. And actually the most useful feature that I found is basically you just tap the on button once, you get a quick display of your battery life. Battery life also actually really impressed me on this camera, which was a really pleasant surprise. Basically I could pretty much do, I would say, about 60 to 70% of a full day of intense shooting just on one charge. And I think if you had an additional battery, it would cover you for a full day of pretty aggressive shooting, no problem. So I'm going to jump into Lightroom here because I just want to show you how much latitude you get to edit these files. You get an absolute ton of data to play with. So here's the original for this image here. And you can see if we crank up the exposure here, first of all, actually, I'm going to go down and enable a profile correction. You can see actually how much exposure that does add to the frame. Let's go down, decrease the highlights slightly. We will bump up the shadows here, and we'll add a bit more contrast into the image. You can actually see immediately quite how much latitude you're getting, and you could obviously crank this much higher if you wanted to, and really we're not introducing much noise into the frame, and that would really even be cleaned up nice and easily, to be honest. Like, you've gone from something which is looking very, very dark, like very moody, to nice and bright, really, without actually losing anything and without introducing much artificial noise. You go to the full extremes, you can see this is post edit here. If I actually hit the before, you can see again how much I'm actually recovering from that image. This is obviously dramatically underexposed. I'm exposing for the sign here, but you can see, of course, there's a ton of artificial noise because we're really cranking things up here. It's like additional 2 stops of exposure, 100 on the highlights recovery. We really are cranking. But if we actually go to here, you can see that once we have actually recovered and done a denoise over this image, we go from something that looks like this to something that looks like this, and that is completely usable, and that's really entirely enabled by how much latitude you get within the files of the Hasselblad. So let's talk about who this camera is for, and let's talk about that value proposition, because of course this is an expensive piece of professional high fidelity camera equipment, and this is actually quite similar to when we were talking about ARRI at the start of the video, because these things actually slot into similar areas of the market. The Hasselblad is about quality and high fidelity over everything else. You are basically giving yourself a chance at creating the best image possible with a camera system. Unlike with other camera systems that maybe put their time and focus into speed, efficiency, flexibility, being able to shoot photos in different environments. For instance, I obviously took this camera to Singapore and shot street with it. It's not really where this camera is actually focused and really where its strengths are. You're not going to nail autofocus 100% of the time with this camera, and because of the 100 megapixel files that are actually being produced and captured every time you shoot, it's not fast enough to shoot street really well anyway. Where this camera's strengths actually lie is shooting things like studio photography, portrait photography, where you're basically going for the best of the best shot and you're being far more considered in the way that you shoot them. There still, of course, continues to be a reason why some of the best photographers in the world shoot Hasselblad and use Hasselblad. That's because they have a camera system that produce stunning images and they trust it to do so. And that's definitely where the X2D kind of slots in the market. I can't wait to shoot with this camera some more.